So whether you think it's fake news or not, you think climate change is fake news and flooding issues is fake news, that's completely up to you. But we got to admit that things are definitely changing. More and more in the news, we're definitely seeing more high potent storms, which are causing havoc for many homeowners and renters across the country, but also here in New Jersey. So in today's video, I want to talk about some of the legislation that's being passed here in New Jersey, really to create some more transparency for you. Also, there's some legislation coming down from Washington, D.C. that's going to impact across the country, not just here in New Jersey. And then finally, maybe a little doom and gloom, but there's some interactive maps that I just saw in the news recently, where you can go in and actually see some of the lower lying areas, what that might look like in regards to flooding issues in 2050. All right, so let's just get right into it. I'm Bob Janis with Coldwell Banker here in Northern New Jersey. Thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Again, if you like what you see today, be sure to give me a thumbs up, but also consider subscribing. The more people that subscribe and give some thumbs up, it really helps me put more content out there, so I really appreciate it. So all kidding aside, whether it's fake news or not, like flooding is a big issue, and I see it a lot here in Northern New Jersey. A lot of these storms that we're seeing and the thunder and the lightning and the amount of rain and the hail, like size of hail is huge. It's really causing havoc for homeowners and renters everywhere, basically. And the more buyers that I talk to, as well as sellers, like sellers too are impacted by this as well. There's a genuine concern of what about your investment if you are looking to purchase a property, but what about your stuff? Is it gonna get ruined if you're in a flood zone and God forbid something was to happen that could actually just destroy many of your personal items? So in today's video, I want to talk about a couple of things. One is what's happening here in New Jersey. Second, I'm going to talk about a couple of things that have been happening in Washington, D.C. that also could impact, again, the transparency and visibility to areas that might be more prone to flood insurance, but also making it more affordable potentially for people across the board. And then last thing I want to talk about are just some of the predictors. What are some of those low-lying areas? We've got them here in New Jersey, where it could be even higher risk areas, especially as we go into 2050. All right, so let's talk about what's been happening here in New Jersey. In fact, Governor Murphy, our governor, just recently signed some legislation just to bring more transparency to flood-prone areas here in our state. Now, what's good about this is because it hasn't necessarily been that transparent or that visible in the past. So I've been a real estate agent for over 5 years at this point, but I also live in a flood zone. And if I knew about some of the factors that would have impacted my property being in a flood zone, I might not have purchased my home. In fact, I have a video about this if you want to check it out over here. It goes into the whole kit and caboodle of what I've experienced, because when I first bought my house, didn't need flood insurance, and then within 5 years, I needed it. Thank goodness I did, because my house flooded. So yeah, I would have liked to have known if I was going to be in a flood zone, is there risk that there could have been a change, because that's what happened to me. And that could have helped me make a more informed decision whether I wanted to purchase my house or not. And unfortunately, I discovered it later on in the process, 5 years later, when there was zoning or rezoning of FEMA maps. And then I discovered I needed flood insurance. So let's go over to the computer. I've got legislation here on the screen. So let's scroll down a little bit. We can see here Governor Murphy, he signs this bill requiring provision of critical flood risk information for homeowners and renters. So not just for homeowners, but landlords need to be as transparent as possible as well. What I can tell you from my experience as a realtor, you have to do some research, right? It's not always apparent that a property might be in a flood zone. And why take a buyer or a renter down the path to get or secure a property and then all of a sudden discover, oh, this could potentially be in a flood zone? That could really impact your decision whether you want to purchase it or not. And I love this statement by Governor Murphy here because it's so true. For far too long, countless New Jerseyans have lacked the critical information they not only need but deserve to make smart, forward-looking decisions for their properties and families. These requirements will help better prepare New Jersey homeowners and renters for extreme storms. The Lieutenant Governor, Sheila Oliver, she goes on to say here that the Department of Community Affairs supports legislation mandating that a home seller or landlord fully disclose whether a property is in a FEMA designated flood hazard zone or not. So how is this going to impact you if you are purchasing or renting? We're going to start to see with this legislation more information that will be disclosed in all of our listing information. We'll have more visibility, which can really help you make a more informed decision whether you want to potentially take the risk, because who's to say that the property will flood? Who knows? We just don't know. There's no crystal ball for that kind of stuff. But if you don't want to have that risk as part of your purchase or part of your rental, then you don't necessarily have to move forward. At least you'll know that more upfront. So this is some really good news that'll be coming to us as realtors that we can now pass on to buyers, renters, and even sellers, because if you're looking to sell, your FEMA map, your FEMA zone might change. And if it changes, that could impact how you price a property. Really, really good, transparent information going to be coming to us in 2023 and beyond as well. All right, so let's turn our attention now to Washington, D.C. And I am not making this a political statement. I'm not making this a political video at all. I don't want to go there. There has been legislation that came through the Biden administration more recently through FEMA. They implemented a new national flood insurance program. And it's basically a pricing methodology. They're calling it Risk Rating 2.0. And it's supposed to be more of an accurate depiction of where a property is located, what the risk levels might be, using their algorithms and maps that they've used over the years to try to accurately price what flood insurance might actually cost. And I'll tell you, when I first bought my property and I realized I needed flood insurance, my lender reached out, I couldn't shop it around. It was like $3,200 extra on top of my homeowner's insurance. It was a huge expense. And you're kind of at the mercy of the process. Like, wow, that's a lot of money. Ultimately, the purpose of this legislation was to really just help buyers and renters be more prepared. But it also was looking for opportunities to try to offset some of the costs when it comes to flood insurance programs. And I'm no longer paying $3,200 a year, and I was able to actually shop it around to get some better prices and still get good protection. One of the requirements of Risk Rating 2.0 has been to try to limit some of the annual increases, no more than 18% per year. I don't know about you, but 18% is kind of high. So I'm going to tell you about some more legislation that the Senate is passing to try to help offset that 18%. Because part of the complaints with some of this 2.0 risk rating, it's impacting, let's say, shore areas where people might have the affordability and they can afford a shore home. We know that that tends to be a little bit more expensive. It might be limiting people who have lower to moderate income and their ability to purchase flood insurance that is reasonable in regards to price. But is it running the risk of, let's say, excluding maybe income levels, for instance? And that's what some of these senators in Washington are looking to pass in regards to legislation. Okay, so let's take a look at this legislation, and it's called the National Flood Insurance Program Reauthorization Act of 2023. A series of sweeping reforms to reduce costs, make generational investments in communities to reduce flood risk, and establish a fair claims process for policyholders. So Senator Menendez goes on to say, with disastrous flooding events becoming all the more common, we must work to create a more sustainable, resilient, and affordable flood insurance program. One of the other members of this bill legislation, Bill Cassidy, he's a Republican from Louisiana. Reforming the NFIP means making it affordable again, and we need to ensure families are not priced out of the program. There are states like in Florida where people are moving. They're getting out of the state because they don't want to deal with the high cost of flood insurance there and the risk that's involved. Frank Pallone, who is a U.S. rep from New Jersey, insurance companies have outright refused to make good on their promises, use the fine print to deny families who lost everything. You know, it's that fine print that's preventing insurance companies from paying out so that people can recuperate. What's happening is, 2.0, probably a good effort to try to streamline and create some caps in regards to how much people should pay for flood insurance. But is it being as inclusive as it should be? And that's where these representatives and senators are coming through to try to offset some of these costs even more. They're looking to cap the annual price increases to 9%. So the Risk Rating 2.0 is looking at an 18% cap. Second, they want to provide a comprehensive voucher system if their flood insurance premium becomes too expensive. So they want to make sure that there's new oversight measures for insurance companies and vendors, and provides FEMA with greater authority to terminate contractors that have a track record of abuse. So, you know, unfortunately in these disasters, people abuse people. It becomes a very frustrating experience. So again, this legislation is meant to provide more visibility and accountability. All right, so the last thing I want to show you is just some predictive mapping that's going on right now in regards to the future. What's happening with global warming, climate change, things are definitely changing. So up on the screen here, I have an interactive map that can show some lower case scenarios to higher case scenarios. And I know here in northern New Jersey, for instance, there are many low-lying areas. You've got the Meadowlands area, you've got parts of Jersey City, for instance, Secaucus. Parts of Bergen County as well have some flooding issues. So this is just an interesting map that we can take a look at here. So if we look at a wide view, and this is kind of like a medium impact potentially by 2050. Look in those red areas there. We're looking at parts of Jersey City area, parts of Bayonne, parts of Hoboken, but especially that East Rutherford area, that Meadowlands marshland, for instance. If there's a major storm, these areas are really going to be prone to flooding. So anything along the eastern side of Route 17, especially like the Little Ferry area, which already has flooding issues, like that's a major flood zone to begin with. Everything surrounding the American Dream and the Meadowlands complex also. We're looking at parts of Lyndhurst, up into Hackensack, so that whole Hackensack River as you're making your way down. If we make our way down just a little bit here, we can see some parts of Hoboken, Union City, for instance. As we come down into the Newark area, right, we can see here, this is the Kearney area, so we're seeing a lot more there. If we go toward the Greenville section of Jersey City, so everything that's along that Hackensack River waterfront potentially might have some issues. I mean, again, this is a predictive tool, but this is all based on some of those lower lying areas that are there to begin with that could see some of these effects of climate change over time. Flooding is a big issue, especially if you're buying real estate and you want to become a renter as well. You want to make sure that you're going to be in a safe area and you want to be able to make an informed decision. So these maps, this legislation that's coming through, is taking into consideration what's happening in the world right now. So I talk to my buyers all the time. It's one of the things that I do now as a real estate agent because it is not as transparent as you hope it would be. I'm always sending them to FEMA. I'm also looking at addresses specifically that they might be looking at, just to give perspective to say, hey, just to flag this property, it looks like it's going to be in a flood zone. And if you're getting a loan, you're going to you will probably need it. You know, maybe you're in a future flood zone that could impact your equity in your home, for instance. I mean, who knows? So having visibility really can be helpful to you as a seller as well. So it's an unfortunate circumstance of where we live in New Jersey. There are many parts that could be in flood zones. One thing to keep in mind too is even if you are not by a body of water, there's still a water table underneath parts of New Jersey, meaning there's water in the ground, and that can come up to basement levels. So the best thing you can do is talk to myself if we're working together, talk to your real estate agent as well, and look for new legislation that is going to provide a lot more transparency and a lot more visibility so that you as a buyer, you as a renter, you as a seller as well can make informed decisions moving forward, because transparency is so important. So I want to thank you guys for watching. I'm Bob Jennis with Coldwell Banker here in northern New Jersey. If you have any questions whatsoever, here's my information. I would love to chat with you further about any questions you have, or if you're looking for some insights here in the northern New Jersey market, give me a call. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.